What is going on, everybody? It is Monday, March the 8th, and this is my news radar. As always, this video is community supported, so please do consider becoming a YouTube member by clicking that join button down below, or perhaps being a patron on Patreon. That link is in the description. Any tiny amount of help does help a lot in the grand scheme of things. Even simply leaving a like, a comment, or hitting that subscribe button all helps tremendously. Thanks. So over the last several months, the phone that my wife Jessie has been using has been the Google Pixel 5. And when the Pixel 5 was announced, there's a small amount of surprise from some people that that phone did not use the latest and greatest Snapdragon processor, instead using the Snapdragon 765. Now this is their upper mid-range chip. For most people, when you see flagship phone as the Pixel 5 was meant to be, you expect to see that top tier, best of the best processor available in that device. But for several different reasons, Google decided to go with the Snapdragon 765. And among those reasons, you have things like improved battery life, which is really important for a lot of people. And the Pixel 5's battery life has been outstanding for her so far, and this has been over the several months now, pretty much since launch. I think she actually got it at launch. Battery life has been tremendous, and the performance has been shockingly really solid. I've never heard her complain one time about this thing being too slow or lagging or doing anything weird like that. I've used it on multiple occasions to take some pictures and things like that while we're out and about, and it always seems incredibly snappy and fast to me. Well, why am I talking about the Google Pixel 5 and the Snapdragon 765? Well, the reason is because we finally have some information on what comes next after the Snapdragon 765. That is, of course, the Snapdragon 775. And this thing's going to be built on a 5nm process, which is always impressive. And we have some specs here that appear to be legitimate. It appears to be, from what I've been able to gather from Android Authority and from XDA Dev, this appears to be a legitimate slide from Qualcomm, although it may be outdated information. But this thing looks to take the 765 and obviously kick it up another notch, with the ability to film at 28 megapixel on 3 lenses all simultaneously, which is pretty impressive. 64 and 20 megapixel at 30 FPS, 4K 60 support, millimeter wave 5G, dual 5G. This thing looks to be pretty rock solid. But the biggest thing about this is the fact that it's moving to a 5nm process, which could really significantly improve the performance on this chip. Maybe this shouldn't come as a huge shock to you because the 800 series has been running 5nm for a little bit, so going that direction is only going to serve to bring them into closer parity with each other, which will allow these mid-range devices like the Pixel 5, which is a mid-range flagship that comes in much cheaper than your typical flagships. These it's not $1,000. Well, that performance is going to get even closer potentially to what we've been seeing in the 800 series chips. And like I've said a million times, you don't need the fastest processor to have a really good phone. People freak out all the time about the 855 and the Surface Duo, and I'm here to tell you that that is not the problem with the Surface Duo. The Duo is plenty fast enough, the hardware is plenty fast enough, and this 775 will probably be faster even than the 855 was at this point with the progress that has been being made in these 7 series mid-range chips. So moving forward, talking about these mid-range chips, well, let's talk about a device that could hypothetically, theoretically, contain that chip. What I've got here is an article from Android Headlines where they're talking about a concept, not the actual thing, but a concept of what a Google Pixel foldable phone could possibly look like. Now, we already know that Google is working on something called the Passport, a folding style device, and they're actually expected to announce this thing this year and probably launch it later on this year. But we can imagine what it might look like. And personally, I really like the look of this thing. It looks like a Pixel that folds in half, which is something that I like. Personally, I think this would be something that would be very cool to see. And a lot of you guys are probably going to say, well, it looks just like a Galaxy Fold, but with Google Pixel skin stuck on top of it. And you are 100% right. That is exactly what it looks like. The biggest difference is that he's moved the hole punch to the left on both screens instead of being center right and center on the front. But it is definitely a really interesting looking concept. He's maintained the fingerprint sensor on the back, which is something that I'm still totally fine with. It's a fine placement for a fingerprint sensor because when you pick up your phone, a lot of times you're holding it like this anyways, aren't you? So your finger's right there where that fingerprint sensor is, and that works really well for me in my experience. Hinge mechanism looks like it's lifted from the fold as well. And he's put together this nice little highlight reel video of this concept. And again, like I've talked about in the past, I'm really interested to see what Google does with a foldable device, in particular, if they're able to keep it a little bit lower in the price range. If they can come in closer to $1,000 or even sub $1,000 by using mid-range parts like the 775 instead of going with the Snapdragon 888, I think that would be a huge win, because ultimately, what does Google want? They want people using Android devices in new and different form factors. Well, someone has to get up front and make those form factors accessible and make them something that's going to be more mainstream. And how do you do that? You make something that is less expensive, something that is more accessible simply by the price. And that's how you proliferate these ideas. And once that happens, once that proliferation has taken place, well, then guess what? More and more people will start making these devices, because now there will be a market already established there for that device. So if Google wants there to be more foldable phones, more folding Android devices, well, then what they need to do is they need to make their own folding Android device, and they need to keep that price relatively low so that more people will buy it. And I think that is hopefully exactly what they're going to do, and I personally cannot wait to see it happen. Let's close things up today with something that's not really a news story, but it is quite interesting. So this story comes from 9to5Mac, and the headline reads, iPhone 11 survives 6 months at the bottom of a lake. Now, obviously, a lot of phones have IP water resistance ratings that say things like 6.5 feet of submersion for 30 minutes. Well, how about at the bottom of a lake for 11 months? Well, this iPhone 11 somehow managed to pull that off. These two lovely people here, Clay and Heather Helkenberg, like to dive to the bottom of these lakes and pull out garbage like GoPros and phones and then try to return them to their owners. Well, they've got this video here, which you can definitely check out on your own if you give that a quick search. I guess I'll put the link in the description down below to it if you want to watch it directly. This is the kind of things that they pull out of that lake. And shockingly, they pulled out this iPhone 11. They said they took it home, cleaned off the dirt, and it just turned right on. Pretty incredible. He managed to pull out the SIM card and get a hold of the owner of the phone, who thought this was some kind of a prank or a joke. Just a really interesting story here for a couple of reasons. One, it's cool that these people are out there doing this and returning these devices to their rightful owners, but really incredibly impressive that this thing managed to survive at the bottom of this lake many feet down for 11 months. It's nearly a full calendar year. Absolutely incredible. I like to give Apple a lot of crap on this channel for being overpriced and maybe not innovating a lot and just kind of, you know, oh, Samsung's got a folding device. Let us wait 4 years until everything's really well refined and then we'll make our own. That kind, you know, look, is that good? Is that bad? That's really up to you to decide what you think about that. But you can't deny that a phone surviving for 11 months at the bottom of a lake is damn impressive. And I'm never here saying iPhones, Apple, they don't make impressive hardware, because clearly they do. So guys, that is all the news I do have for you today. Be sure to check back every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for the next News Radar. And until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.